Imagine being robbed and then forced to pay back the money with interest. That's Malaysia's reality. Billions were stolen, poured into Hollywood blockbusters, Oscars, champagne-soaked parties. Money that made The Wolf of Wall Street, a movie about greed, paid for with money stolen from Malaysians. And here's the ugliest twist. Malaysia didn't just lose that money. They're still paying it back. Not for a year, not for a decade, but for a generation. Hollywood got the Oscars, America got the loot, and Malaysia got the debt. But how did it happen? It began with a promise that Malaysia could become the next Dubai, the next Singapore, a global hub powered by billions in investment. The tool for that dream was called One Malaysia Development Berhad, 1MDB. On paper, it looked like a sovereign wealth fund. But unlike Norway's oil fund, or Singapore's Temasek, 1MDB wasn't built on natural riches. It was built on borrowed money, debt, guaranteed in the name of Malaysia's people. The idea was simple: borrow billions, invest them wisely, and turn Malaysia into an international powerhouse. But in reality, that debt became something else entirely. Because behind the polished brochures and grand promises were a handful of men with far different plans. At the center was Low Tak Jho, better known as Jho Low, a young Malaysian financier who called himself a consultant, but acted more like a celebrity impresario. And then there was Riza Aziz, Prime Minister Najib Razak's stepson, who would soon be the face of Hollywood's newest production company. Together, they unlocked the billions flowing into 1MDB, and instead of using it to build Malaysia's future, they used it to build their own. Through a maze of offshore accounts, shell companies, and cooperative bankers, billions were siphoned away from Malaysia's debts and into private hands. Some went into mansions in New York, paintings in Switzerland, jewels in Beverly Hills, and a chunk of it, enough to fund entire public projects in Malaysia, went somewhere no one expected. Straight into Hollywood. The yachts, the jewels, the Oscar itself. The Wolf of Wall Street was just the beginning. Through Red Granite Pictures, fronted by Riza Aziz, the Prime Minister's stepson, Malaysian debt money flowed directly into Hollywood. To the industry, Red Granite looked like a bold new studio, splashing cash on projects no one else would touch. But behind the curtain, it was fueled by billions siphoned out of Malaysia, and Hollywood welcomed it with open arms. Red Granite financed The Wolf of Wall Street, then quickly followed with glossy comedies like Daddy's Home and Dumb and Dumber 2. Suddenly, Aziz was hosting premieres, walking red carpets, rubbing shoulders with the world's biggest stars: Leonardo DiCaprio, Martin Scorsese, Jonah Hill, Margot Robbie. For them, this was just another payday. For Malaysia, it was money borrowed in the people's name, repaid with interest, but splashed across Hollywood soundstages. But this wasn't just about movies. Red Granite threw lavish parties on yachts in Cannes. Aziz bought a mansion in Beverly Hills. Stars and financiers mingled under glittering lights, while borrowed Malaysian billions picked up the tab. And no one in Beverly Hills asked where it came from. The checks cleared, the sets rolled, the cameras never stopped. Because once dirty money hit Los Angeles, it didn't look dirty anymore. It looked like success. But Hollywood wasn't the only winner. Far from the red carpets, another power player was taking a much bigger cut: Wall Street. While Hollywood rolled cameras, Wall Street rolled in billions, because none of this would have been possible without the bankers. Goldman Sachs helped 1MDB raise over $6 billion through a series of bond deals. To the outside world, it looked like a vote of confidence in Malaysia's future. Inside, it was something else entirely. The deals were rushed, secretive, and shrouded in red flags, but Goldman pushed them through anyway, and in return, pocketed nearly $600 million in fees. One of the most lucrative deals in the bank's history. At the center was Tim Leissner, a star Goldman banker. Charismatic, connected, and later revealed to be deeply corrupt. Along with his colleague Roger Ng, Leissner helped grease the wheels that kept billions flowing out of Malaysia and into offshore accounts. When the scandal broke, Leissner turned into a cooperating witness, testifying how bribes, kickbacks, and fake documents fueled the biggest financial heist of the decade. And the banks didn't just walk away untouched. In 2020, Goldman Sachs struck a deal with Malaysia, paying over $2.9 billion to settle charges. It was one of the largest financial penalties in Wall Street history. But the story didn't end there. Because in August 2025, JP Morgan Chase, another banking giant tied to 1MDB transactions, agreed to pay Malaysia $330 million to settle its role. Even now, more than a decade later, the fallout continues. Global banks are still being forced to hand over chunks of cash for their part in enabling the heist. On paper, it looked like Malaysia had clawed back billions. So did justice finally arrive? Did Wall Street's billions flow back to the people who paid the price? Not exactly. Because the next chapter wasn't about justice. It was about how, even when the loot was returned, it didn't go back to Malaysia. When the U.S. Department of Justice finally stepped in, the party was over. Investigators traced the paintings, the diamonds, the super yacht. One by one, Hollywood stars and celebrities were forced to hand them back. Leonardo DiCaprio surrendered his Basquiat, his Picasso, even Marlon Brando's Oscar statuette. Priceless gifts carried into evidence lockers. Miranda Kerr turned over her $8 million in diamonds, necklaces, earrings, bracelets once draped across red carpets, now cataloged in federal vaults. Even the Equanimity, Jho Low's $250 million floating palace, was seized in a dramatic raid at sea, boarded by armed officers as it drifted off Bali. A yacht with a helipad, a spa, and a movie theater, dragged back to port, a symbol of corruption stripped bare. On the surface, it looked like justice. Billions in assets seized. Headlines around the world boasting of record recoveries. But here's the betrayal. None of it went straight back to Malaysia. The Basquiat didn't return to Kuala Lumpur. The diamonds didn't glitter in Malaysian museums. The Equanimity wasn't sold to pay off the debt at home. Instead, the assets went to Washington, to New York, to the U.S. Department of Justice. Paintings auctioned off to anonymous buyers. Jewels locked away in foreign vaults. The yacht sold under foreign courts. And the money? Swallowed by legal fees, administrative costs, settlements, and bureaucracy. Yes, some of it eventually trickled back. Small transfers into Malaysia's 1MDB Asset Recovery Trust account. In September 2025, Malaysia recovered 39 million ringgit from Jho Low's family, a tiny fraction compared to the billions stolen. Meanwhile, banks like Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan signed multi-billion-dollar settlements, but the payouts were routed through lawyers, agencies, and courts abroad. Ordinary Malaysians never saw that money in their schools, hospitals, or communities. So while Hollywood surrendered its trophies and Wall Street cut its deals, the people who had been robbed were still left with the bill. For Malaysians, this wasn't justice. It was betrayal. Theft on top of theft. Once, when the billions vanished. Again, when the treasures were seized abroad and never returned. And the cruelest twist of all? The debt didn't disappear with the scandal. Malaysians are still repaying it, year after year, with interest. By 2025, Malaysia had already poured more than 42 billion ringgit into paying off 1MDB's debts. And it's still not over, because those repayments won't end until 2039, 3 decades after the scandal began. Think about that. A child born the year 1MDB was launched will be nearly 30 before the debt is finally gone. An entire generation will live under the shadow of a crime they never benefited from. Money that should have gone into schools, hospitals, highways, and the future was instead burned to cover the cost of yachts, diamonds, and Hollywood blockbusters. That's the worst betrayal. Because Hollywood walked away with its Oscars. Wall Street walked away with its profits. Washington kept the loot. And Malaysia? Malaysia got the bill. Even today, as payments continue, Hollywood still profits. The Wolf of Wall Street streams on Netflix. Royalties flow, the film still earns. Built on debt, Malaysians are repaying with interest. That's the scandal's cruel legacy. The heist may have ended years ago, but the story hasn't. Netflix is already producing a true crime documentary about the 1MDB scandal, but we've been covering it for you right here. Najib Razak's royal addendum could let him serve his shortened sentence in a mansion. Rosmah Mansor is still walking free, but her days may be numbered after losing appeal after appeal. And Jho Low, he's still hiding in Shanghai. This isn't just one scandal. It's an entire universe of power, betrayal, and collapse. That's why we've built our 1MDB betrayal series, pulling together every angle the world needs to see. And we're not done, because the story stretches far beyond Hollywood. Wall Street raised $6 billion for 1MDB and walked away with record profits. The Middle East poured money into secret deals. And the cover-ups, the betrayals, even the murders, they still haunt Malaysia today. Subscribe and follow us as we keep telling the stories others won't. I'm John, and this is Silk Street. Power, betrayal, collapse.